Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
When an engine needs a rebuild, I bring it to Joe.
That's me.
And you know what he's rebuilding a lot more of these days?
4-cylinder engines.
Small engines work a lot harder than big engines, so if you have a small car, it's even more important to take care of it right. Change the oil regularly, and put in a new Fram oil filter when you're supposed to. A Fram filter doesn't cost much.
I do.
But the choice is yours. You can pay me now.
Or pay me later.
That's right. We're back to the pay me now or pay me later thing. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the WorryFree Retirement, with offices in Louisville and Bowling Green. Your host, 5-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Welcome to the WorryFree Retirement, folks. And yes, we've played it before. And for today's topic on taxes, we got to let it roll again. You can see over my shoulder here, in my view, one of the greatest commercials of all time, the Fram oil filter commercial. To set the stage for today's show, the reason I wanted to show the Fram oil filter commercial is we've been in the last couple of weeks talking about taxes. This is a 5-week series on taxes. This is episode number 3. And we'll be getting into the details of the notion of after-tax tax deferred. But when it comes to messaging from the financial world, I like to use this Fram oil filter as a great example. So really, what is this spot all about? Well, basically, the premise is, if you're willing to spend $4 today on a Fram oil filter, you're hoping that because of that Fram oil filter, your engine one day is not going to blow up. So you could choose to not do anything. You could keep the $4 in your pocket, right, and just leave it there and not buy the Fram oil filter and hope nothing happens. We're going to be talking more about what would that look like if you didn't pay now and maybe pay later. So there's basically 4 types of taxation. And to help us, let's go back to this original graphic. We've been covering this each week. Let's throw this up full screen here, if you would, please. All right. Now, we're not going to go into a lot of detail. The first week we covered what was called after-tax taxable. Now, remember this category, folks, because near the end of this program, it's going to be real important for you to understand this category as we talk about the third category, okay? So the example we're going to use later, you say, okay, Tony, what's after-tax taxable? Let's imagine that you've made money, you've already paid taxes on that money, and you want to invest that money somewhere. That would mean that it's after tax, and maybe you elect to put it in a CD. A CD, certificate of deposits, pay interest, and that interest has to be currently taxable. So that would be an example. Last week we covered the other category, which is pre-tax tax deferred. Now this is the one everybody's familiar with because the most people that can fog a mirror out there are investing in either a 401k or IRA. That's because you get it pre-tax. You're assuming you're going to save taxes because you save taxes now because you're investing in this pre-tax account. But you have to wait down the road to see what the taxes are to really know if you're going to save any taxes. So that's really what we call pre-tax tax deferred. Now the category today we're going to be talking about is after-tax tax deferred. Specifically, we're going to be talking about later in the show tax deferred annuities and also cash value of life insurance, which is tax deferred. And then next week, you're really going to want to stay tuned for next week. But folks, you've got to DVR these shows. I have people DVR on these shows. If you think, I don't know if I can catch next week's show, you better DVR it. Because next week we'll be talking about category 4, which is my favorite from a planning standpoint, which is after-tax, tax-free. All right, so those are the 4 types of taxations. Now, what I'm going to do when I come back, we're going to kind of dive into the concept of what does tax deferred mean. What has the financial institutions, specifically the insurance companies of the world, how have they kind of propagated this notion of tax deferred on us? Is it a good deal? Is it not? Should we pay now, pay later? And we'll keep kind of weaving in this whole Fram oil filter situation. So believe it or not, in some cases, even if you defer taxes, we're going to find out in the next segment that that may not be a good thing. You're watching the WorryFree Retirement. I'll be right back. It only happens one time, and just 140 people can attend. I'm Tony Walker, inviting you to a free screening of the breakthrough documentary, The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming, Tuesday, March 5th in Louisville. This shocking film reveals why you could be paying far more in taxes in retirement and how you can defend yourself. If you've saved at least $250,000 for retirement, call to reserve your free ticket at 877-499-9255.
And now it's time for Tony in the Trenches.
Our Tony in the Trenches question comes from Jane in Bardstown, Kentucky, who asks, Tony, when filing my taxes this past year, it was suggested that I invest in an IRA so that I could deduct that money on my 2018 taxes. The thought being, of course, I would save on taxes. Is this an accurate statement? Well, Jane, I do remind you, this is the information we covered on last week, and Aaron in the break was telling me, America's favorite financial sidekick, he said, Tony, don't forget to tell people about the YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and go to Tony Walker Financial, you can watch those previous episodes. So this question falls into pre-tax tax deferred, into that category, and the response I'd have to say is, it's like the Fram oil filter. You can pay now, that's you deduct the taxes and pay into the IRA to the financial institution, and hope that you don't have to pay later. But the problem with an IRA 401k, there is something buried within that called a tax tumor. So in general, here's the rule of thumb. With any type of tax savings, whatever you're doing today, if you're in a lower tax bracket in the future, you'll save on taxes. If your future tax bracket is the same or higher, you're going to owe more in taxes. It does not save you a nickel in taxes. Oh, by the way, speaking of taxes, we're trying something unusual. We're going to rent a movie theater in Louisville, Kentucky. If you have at least $250,000 of retirement assets, it's called The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming. And in this, experts are talking about the future of our country, the taxes, the deficits, and whether or not we think taxes will be higher in the future. I don't know about you, but I certainly think they will be. So that's something you might want to check out. It's limited to the first 140 people who will be in Louisville, Kentucky in March. Go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com if you'd like to find out more and attend The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming. Well, you may have seen graphs like this. I don't know. When I first got in the business in 1984, boy, I sure was caught off with these graphs. Most of these graphs were actually issued by insurance companies who were trying to sell tax-deferred annuities, and they were trying to sell life insurance policies, because buried within life insurance policies, which I love, by the way, is something called tax-deferred cash value. If you've watched this show long enough, I know a lot of people don't like dividend participating whole life. I love it. I always tell people I was able to purchase this building in Louisville, Kentucky, borrowing from my tax-free cash value, because I made a loan against the policy. I didn't have to pay any taxes on it. And of course, I'm just paying myself back plus interest. I was able to skip the whole bank thing. So when people say, I don't buy anything with cash value, you're going to see in a minute, they have no clue about economics and opportunity cost. But basically, I digress. All right, so here's this huge chart, and it shows the power of tax-deferred growth. Remember, we're in our third category, after-tax tax deferred. So what this graph is basically showing is, hey, sock all your money away with us, put it in a tax-deferred annuity or put it into life insurance, and what's going to happen is you're going to have more money because you have less taxes. But is that really true? Well, we go back to the question we just had from Jane, and the answer is no, that is not true. Because even as we're going to see in the next segment, even if I plow away after-tax money, all right, I put it away in a tax-deferred annuity, granted, I owe no taxes on that accumulation during the accumulation period because it's tax-deferred. But think about this. When I go to take the money out, okay, 30 years from now, and we'll see this in the next segment, really good stuff coming up. When I go to take the money out, the gain on that annuity is all taxable. So if you're in a, let's say, a 25% bracket now and a 25% bracket in 30 years and you go take the money out, it's the same taxes. If you're in a higher tax bracket when you go to take the money out, it's even worse. If you're in a lower tax bracket, it's better. So you say, but Tony, what does this have to do with taxes, and how do I know if this is a good deal or not? Should I pay now or pay later? What we're going to show you in this next segment is going to fascinate you. It may seem overly complicated. It is a little complicated. I'm going to try to dumb this down so all of us can understand it, but it is crucial to fighting through these ads, all this marketing, all this internet stuff you're seeing, to try to understand the truth behind tax-deferred enjoyment of your money. You're getting ready to learn something about an interesting economic concept that most people don't understand. Let me get the whiteboard out. This is really going to be of help to you.
Tired of the financial world chasing after your money? Dinner seminar invitations? Annoying pop-up ads on your computer from out-of-state advisors? It all adds up to confusion. There is a better way. Meet in person with nationally recognized retirement specialist Tony Walker. Tony's personal one-on-one approach has helped thousands of savers worry less about money, and best of all, Tony's right in our own backyard. Don't leave your retirement to chance. Make the short drive to meet in person with Tony now. To get started, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
And now it's time for the adventures of Stella and Scout. You've been watching The Adventures of Stella and Scout.
Ah yes, the Tony Walker bobblehead. That's my granddaughter Scout, and my daughter Lacey sent me that video the other day. It was hilarious. Scout, apparently, she loves the bobblehead just like most people do. In fact, you know what? We've got so many of these bobbleheads we've been giving out, the Tony Walker Annuity King bobblehead. We're going to make a special offer to the first 5 people that go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to find it on the homepage. There's a place to enter your data, and the first 5 that we get, we're going to mail you absolutely free one of these coveted Tony Walker bobbleheads. Hope you enjoy that. We've had a lot of fun with the bobblehead. Now we're talking about taxes. We're talking about the idea of deferring taxes and talking about, we call them mountain charts. Here's an example of one, these humongous growth elements of the tax-deferred annuity or cash value. And insurance companies have used these for years to tout tax-deferred growth. And on the surface, these are accurate. These are what the taxes would be if you deferred them. But as we've talked about, with taxes, if you're in a higher tax bracket in the future, you're not saving money on taxes as these graphs might lead you to believe. That's because you have to introduce into this the economic principle of lost opportunity cost. So how can we kind of break this down to understand whether really deferring taxes is a good thing or not? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to imagine that we have a taxable account. Remember, there's 4 types of taxation. We've imagined that you've got money. I had a client in come in yesterday, and they're doing this. They've already funded to the max their 401k plans. They're making good money in their business, and they want a place they can just start coughing money into for the future, and we can do that. And they said, well, could I do an annuity? We said, absolutely. It's tax deferred. But in order to understand the taxes and the opportunity cost, we had to imagine that they were putting it in a taxable account. So let's just say you could get 5% in a CD. That's all fully taxable. And let's say, in this example, you have 25% in a tax bracket. So we're going to imagine over time maybe you could get a 5% CD taxable and let's say a 5% tax-deferred annuity. That's the average growth rate. So we're imagining this person comes into me, let's say they're 35, they have $200,000, and they're going to put in a payment of $10,000 per year. Remember, this is an after-tax account. Now, if their tax rate is 25%, remember, on 5%, they're going to have interest that's going to have to go on the tax return. So they're going to pay taxes the first year of $2,625. And you say, well, Tony, where does that money come from? Do I call the bank and pull the money out to pay the taxes? Nobody does that. Everybody reinvests their dividends and interest, which under this example is a bad idea. We talked about this in a previous show. But you still have to owe the taxes, so you got to pay them out of pocket. So at the end of the year, your accountant in this example says, hey, you owe $2,625 on the interest owed. And you say, well, what's that equate to? Well, because that money's gone forever, we have to put an interest cost on that. That's called LOC, or lost opportunity cost. But now your balance, because you did not take the tax out of the account, the balance in your account is $220,000. So this is why a lot of people don't understand taxes, because they really never see the tax that's associated from the account where the tax was produced. I hope this is making sense, because this is key. So again, it's like the Fram oil filter. You can pay now or pay later. In this example, we're paying the tax now out of pocket. The cost of that is not just the tax, but the lost interest that we just lost that year because the money is gone forever. So now we're going to fast forward. So this person keeps putting in $10,000 a year. At age 45, right, their balance is right at $457,000. Remember, they have not taken any money out of this account to pay the taxes. We're assuming they're paying the taxes from other sources. They have no clue what the taxes are. Nobody's ever showed it to them. They have this mountain chart they're looking at. Again, we're getting to the tax deferred. Hang in there, but we have to understand taxable. They add another $10,000. They're doing that every year. And their tax that year, boy, it's starting to go up now, is that tax is $5,848. Now, this is why you want tax deferred, right? You're saying, that's the whole point, Tony. Why wouldn't we want to do that? And the opportunity cost total, what you've paid in taxes and opportunity cost, is $59,000. That's the tax plus the interest on the taxes you've lost. Remember, on a taxable basis, but you're not paying the tax out of the account, so the account keeps growing. Now let's slide on down to age 65, all right? Now we're really compounding this thing out. So at 65, our balance is $1,477,616. I know that's a lot of money, almost $1.5 million. You're still adding in your $10,000 that last year. Your tax that year alone is $18,595. You got to get that from somewhere out of pocket. That's a lot of money. And look at this. Your opportunity cost on the taxes and the lost interest, $490,000. But this was what fools people. But on paper, in this example in the CD, it could be a growth mutual fund, whatever, you still got $1.5 million. So you're saying, Tony, I am confused. What is going on here? Why would I want tax deferred? Tax deferred would say you take the $1.5 million less your cost basis, okay, which that's $500,000, all right? So your gain now is right at $1,061,000. Well, in 30 years, folks, 30 years, if you're in the same tax bracket, 25%, you've got to pay taxes on the full $1,006,000. What does that number come up to? These total taxes were around $265. It's the same. There was no tax savings if you assume the same tax bracket. In fact, if you're in a tax bracket that's higher in the future, then you owe more taxes. It was not necessary to defer taxes. You just deferred taxes into a higher tax bracket. So we look at this and say, Tony, this is looking like gibberish. How do I determine what the real savings is? Because it wasn't found in this example in the taxes. What you have to do, you have to examine the opportunity cost and the actual taxes. Now, this is why it's so important to defer taxes, because we don't know what the future tax brackets are going to be, so we don't know the tax savings until we get there. See what I'm saying? Kind of the Fram oil filter, pay me now or pay me later. We don't know if the engine's going to blow up one day. If we purchase the Fram oil filter, we create a cost. That's a fact. So what we have to do, we take our opportunity cost less the taxes that we know existed, okay? And the difference of that is around $224,000. So what happened here with the tax deferred account, by not paying all these taxes, if we had a tax deferred annuity, or if we had tax deferred cash value in a whole life policy, something that I'm a big proponent of. Folks, you know, people who don't understand life insurance will tell you to buy term and invest the difference. They have no clue how to understand economics. It's really kind of sad, quite frankly. And these people get a lot of airtime and a lot of publicity. The way I purchased this building where we're recording this studio on February 5th, 2019, I purchased this building not through a bank, but through loans from my policy, my cash value. Totally tax-free, and I'm paying myself back plus interest. So don't let people tell you that this cash value is a bad thing. It's a very good thing. And because it's tax deferred, we're not necessarily saving on taxes. We don't know that. What we're saving on is the opportunity cost. So think about this. if we did not have to pay taxes now, that's money you can allow to continue to grow, plus we don't lose the interest on the taxes we had to pay. You might be saying, Tony, I'm really getting confused now. Is this what I need to be doing or not? Well, here's the facts, folks. The only way we can know for sure whether you should be paying the taxes now or paying them later is to meet. I'm coming on my 35th year in this business. I've met with thousands of people, and I understand how to make sure whether we defer taxes, whether we pay them now or pay them later. But the only way I can help you is to look at your specific situation. There's no one size fits all here, folks. I am trained in this area. We have a team of people who, if you decide to work with us, will be there for the long haul to help you. So take advantage of that. Why don't we meet in person or talk by phone? It's easy to do. Just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Click on that Let's Get Started button. For those of you over in the Lexington area who are watching this show, you might say, well, Tony, can I just come over to the Louisville office? Absolutely. We have people coming from the Louisville office. It's a short 60-minute drive. Come on over. We'll set up a time to meet and go over your specific situation. Well, what does the Bible have to say about all these taxes? It has a lot to say, but the answer is going to surprise you in terms of our attitude about them. I'll be right back. Let me get a cup of coffee. It only happens one time, and just 140 people can attend. I'm Tony Walker, inviting you to a free screening of the breakthrough documentary, The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming, Tuesday, March 5th in Louisville. This shocking film reveals why you could be paying far more in taxes in retirement and how you can defend yourself. If you've saved at least $250,000 for retirement, call to reserve your free ticket at 877-499-9255.
Now the story of David Darby, a Washington state resident, challenging the state constitution. Darby says he doesn't think he has to pay taxes. So today, Clark County auctioned off his land and says it'll be up to the new owner to take over the property.
Well, that worked out nicely for Mr. Darby. Don't pay your taxes, they sell your land. So we get it. Like Mr. Darby, we all hate the thought of having to pay taxes, or at least I used to. You know, years ago, this was years ago, when I used to do a lot of business planning for business owners and things like that, I was paying a lot of taxes, and I was getting frustrated, and I was visiting with this particular business owner one day, and I got on a big roll about paying taxes and how I was frustrated and blah, blah, blah. I was just going to town. And I remember the gentleman didn't say a word. He didn't jump into the fray of this foolish conversation and my rambling on about taxes and how immoral it was and all this stuff. And I finally finished, and I looked at him, and he said, you know, Tony, my dad used to have a saying about money and taxes. He said, if you owe taxes, that means you're making money. And if you have the money to pay the taxes, that just means you've done a good job of managing your money so you can pay them. And I thought, he's right. Why not just accept the fact that taxes are a part of life? And that means basically that to pay taxes, actually, if you're a Christian, is truly a blessing. That instead of sitting back and complaining, what I've personally decided to do in my life and in the life of others is to try to help them seek areas of refuge from these taxes. In other words, how can we legally save on taxes? So what does God have to say about all this paying taxes? Actually, not much. That's because God assumes we're going to pay what we owe, yes, even taxes. God assumes that we know that while He is in charge of putting man in charge of the world, tax laws, for instance, and edicts, He also assumes that we're going to trust Him, that we know He's in control in the end of all things. Remember, there's a big difference between being in charge, that's the job of man, and being in control, that's God's part. They're totally different items. Now, it's interesting. Let's go to Luke 2:1, Aaron. He gives us an account in Luke 2:1 of the time right before the birth of Jesus, when out of the blue, a census was taken at just the time Mary was pregnant with Jesus. Now, heads up, folks, whenever there's a census, there's only one good reason they do censuses, and that's because the king of the day or the politicians of the day want to know where you live so they can do what? Collect taxes. You don't have any choice in the matter. Think it's bad now. At least we can vote people out of office. Back then, the king was in for a lifetime. He wanted to charge taxes, you got to pay taxes. That's all there was to it. Now, this isn't something new. If we turn over to 2 Kings 23:35, it simply says, the first order of business of the king is taxation. But look, instead of getting mad, why don't you just trust God and His control? He says He's in control of government officials. You say, is He really, Tony? Is He really in charge of these people? Let's turn over to Proverbs 21. Interesting, Proverbs 21 says, the king's heart is like channels of water in the hand of the Lord. He, that's God, turns it wherever He wishes. Now, personally, I learned two things from this verse. Number one, God's in control of the kings and the politicians of the day. And number two, as much as that king or those politicians tend to think they're in control, God is the one that ultimately determines all outcomes. Book of Daniel. Daniel was lamenting over the wickedness of the day and longing for the end times. And he finally asks God in chapter 12, verse 8, he says, my Lord, what will be of the outcome of these events? And God simply responds in verse 9, go your way, Daniel, for these words are concealed and sealed up until the end of time. In other words, Daniel, would you please quit worrying about things that are out of your control? And I would add, why in the world don't you start focusing on the things that are in your control? So folks, here's my edict when it comes to paying taxes. Why don't you just simply learn what you can legally do to save on taxes? Why don't you take time to spend time with somebody like me that understands opportunity cost and understand that it's your money? As a fiduciary, my job is to do everything I can to put you in more control of your money, to pay the least amount of taxes, the least amount in fees, and of course to make sure you don't run out of money in retirement. So don't just sit there, don't sit there complaining and griping. Get up, get on your cell phone, get on your laptop and do this. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and click on the Let's Get Started button. You know, the best part is, folks, there's absolutely no cost or obligation to talk to me. Had somebody in the office the other day, and the person looked at me and said, Tony, you've now met with us twice. I told a gentleman at the office the other day I was meeting with you. He said, there's no way. That guy on TV, I guarantee he ain't going to spend any time with you. And they're absolutely wrong, folks. My mission in life is to help savers worry less about money, and I'd like to help you too. So take advantage of meeting with me in person at either our Bowling Green or Louisville, Kentucky offices. For those of you over in the Lexington area, folks, it's a short drive over to Louisville. I'll make it worth your while. We'll sit down, we'll learn about your situation and how I can help you be in more control of your money. TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Log on and do it today. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's program. Remember, next week we're going to get into the fourth type of taxation, one of my favorites for planning, the after-tax tax-free. In other words, what if you could make taxes go away forever? What if all the money you accumulated was going to be tax-free forever, not only to you, but to your family? Well, next week we're going to be talking about that on the Worry-Free Retirement. But between now and then, you got to remember, if all else fails, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.